the Zephyrian warship. Dominator's Pride drifted through the asteroid field like a predator stalking its prey. Commander Vexthor stood on the bridge, his 4 arms crossed behind his chitinous back as he watched the tactical display. The human vessel had been broadcasting distress signals for 3 standard cycles now, its engines dark and life support failing. "Another pathetic human craft," sneered Lieutenant Kratos from the weapons station. "These soft-skinned bipeds never learn. Their ships are primitive, their technology laughable." Vexthor's mandibles clicked in agreement. The Zephyrian Empire had been expanding across this sector for decades, crushing every species that dared resist. Humans were particularly amusing targets, so fragile, so emotional, so utterly incapable of true warfare. They clung to outdated concepts like honor and mercy, weaknesses that the Empire exploited ruthlessly. The human ship was small, barely larger than a fighter craft. Its hull bore scorch marks from recent combat, and several sections showed breach damage hastily sealed with emergency patches. According to their sensors, only 1 life sign remained aboard. "Sir," called the sensor operator, "the human vessel appears to be a military craft. Design suggests it's some kind of reconnaissance fighter." "Even better," Vexthor hissed with satisfaction. "A human soldier will provide excellent intelligence about their pathetic defense networks. Bring us alongside. I want this one taken alive." The massive Zephyrian dreadnought maneuvered closer to the crippled fighter. Through the viewports, they could see the human craft more clearly. Sleek lines marred by battle damage, its dark hull reflecting the distant stars. It looked dead in space, powerless and helpless. "Deploying capture field," announced the tactical officer. Invisible energy tendrils reached out from the Dominator's Pride, enveloping the human ship in a containment web that would prevent any attempt at self-destruction. The Zephyrians had learned that humans sometimes chose death over capture, another sign of their irrational nature. As the smaller vessel was drawn into the docking bay, Vexthor felt a familiar surge of anticipation. Breaking human prisoners was one of his favorite pastimes. Their minds were so linear, so predictable. Unlike the crystalline thought patterns of the Altarians or the hive consciousness of the Swarm Collective, humans thought in simple, emotional terms that made them easy to manipulate. The docking bay pressurized with a sharp hiss. Through the observation deck, Vexthor could see his boarding team assembling. 12 of his finest warriors, each standing nearly 3 meters tall and armed with plasma rifles. Their exoskeletons gleamed under the harsh lighting, and their secondary arms carried shock batons for subduing resistant prisoners. "Remember," Vexthor transmitted to the team leader, "I want the human conscious and relatively undamaged. We need information about their fleet movements and base locations." The boarding team moved with practiced efficiency toward the captured fighter. The human craft's airlock had been damaged in whatever battle had crippled it, forcing the Zephyrians to cut through the hull with plasma torches. Sparks flew as they carved an entrance, the metal glowing white-hot before cooling to dull red. Inside the fighter's cramped cockpit, they found him. The human was slumped over his controls, unconscious from what appeared to be oxygen deprivation. He was smaller than average for his species, perhaps 1.8 meters tall, with dark hair and olive skin. His uniform was torn and blood-stained, suggesting he'd been injured in the battle that disabled his ship. "Pathetic," muttered Sergeant Grixnell as he hefted the unconscious human over his shoulder. "Look how small and weak it is. No wonder their species falls so easily to superior races." What none of the Zephyrians noticed were the calloused hands, scarred from countless hours of combat training. They didn't recognize the specific patches on his torn uniform, a trident crossed with an anchor, symbols that would have meant nothing to alien minds anyway. They saw only another broken human, another source of intelligence to be extracted through pain and fear. The prisoner was carried to Detention Block 7, the section of the ship reserved for special interrogations. The cell was a stark cube of polished metal, 3 meters on each side, with no furnishings except a waste receptacle and a water dispenser. Gravity generators kept the occupant oriented toward what the Zephyrians considered down, while hidden speakers could broadcast sounds at frequencies designed to cause maximum psychological distress. As the human was dumped onto the cold floor, Chief Medical Officer Thaisara ran her scanner over his body. Multiple contusions, minor lacerations, and signs of decompression exposure, she reported. Nothing life-threatening. He should regain consciousness within the hour. Excellent, Vex Thor replied through the comm system. Begin standard interrogation protocols once he awakens. I want to know everything about human military capabilities, base locations, and fleet strength. The medical officer injected the prisoner with a mild stimulant to accelerate his recovery, then left him alone in the cell. Security cameras tracked every movement, every breath, waiting for signs of consciousness. What the Zephyrians didn't understand was that the man lying on their detention cell floor was not just any human soldier. His name was Marcus Chen, and for the past 12 years, he had been a member of the United Earth Navy's most elite fighting force. He was a Navy SEAL, trained in underwater demolitions, close-quarters combat, psychological operations, and survival techniques that pushed the boundaries of human endurance. The mission that had led to his capture was supposed to be routine reconnaissance. Slip into the Kepler 442 system, gather intelligence on Zephyrian fleet movements, and return to base with actionable data. But the enemy had been waiting, almost as if they knew he was coming. His fighter had taken critical damage during the escape, forcing him to shut down all non-essential systems and drift in the asteroid field while he waited for rescue. Rescue that would never come, because Marcus had made sure of that. Before losing consciousness, he had activated a hidden protocol in his ship's communication system, a delayed transmission that would warn Earth Command about the trap and advise them to write off Agent Chen as killed in action. The mission was more important than any individual operative. As the stimulant worked its way through his system, Marcus began to stir. His training kicked in automatically, years of conditioning taking over before conscious thought returned. He remained perfectly still, breathing slowly and evenly, while his other senses catalogued his surroundings. The air smelled of ozone and metallic compounds, suggesting an artificial atmosphere. The gravity felt slightly heavier than Earth standard, and the subtle vibrations through the floor indicated he was aboard a large spacecraft. His hands and feet were unrestrained, a mistake his captors would soon regret. Memory flooded back as full consciousness returned. The ambush, the damage to his fighter, the decision to destroy his ship's computer core rather than let it fall into enemy hands. He had succeeded in that much, at least. The Zephyrians might have his body, but they would learn nothing useful from his vessel's systems. Marcus opened his eyes and slowly sat up, making a show of confusion and disorientation. Through the transparent aluminum walls of his cell, he could see alien figures moving in the corridor beyond. Zephyrians. He recognized them from intelligence briefings. Large insectoid with natural armor plating and multiple limbs, dangerous in direct combat, but predictable in their tactics and psychology. "The human awakens," announced a voice through the cell's speakers. The translation was slightly off, giving the words an oddly formal quality. "You are prisoner aboard the Zephyrian Imperial vessel, Dominator's Pride. You will cooperate with interrogation procedures, or you will experience pain beyond your species' comprehension." Marcus looked around the cell with apparent bewilderment, playing the role of a confused and frightened pilot. In reality, he was already analyzing potential weaknesses in the containment system, noting the placement of security cameras and estimating the thickness of the walls. The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss, and two Zephyrian guards entered. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never encountered truly dangerous prey, their weapons held casually rather than at ready position. Behind them came an officer whose elaborate chest armor marked him as someone of significant rank. "I am Commander Vex Thor," the alien announced, his four arms spread in what Marcus recognized as a dominance display. "You are now property of the Zephyrian Empire. Your cooperation will determine whether your remaining existence is merely unpleasant or exquisitely agonizing." Marcus cowered against the far wall, letting fear show in his eyes. "Please," he whispered, his voice shaking convincingly. "I'm just a pilot. I don't know anything important." Vex Thor's mandibles clicked in what passed for Zephyrian laughter. "All humans claim ignorance when first captured, but we have methods for extracting truth from even the most stubborn minds. You will tell us about your fleet dispositions, your base locations, your defensive capabilities?" "I really don't know," Marcus insisted, allowing his voice to crack slightly. "I'm nobody important, just a reconnaissance pilot." "We shall see," the commander replied coldly. "Guards, prepare the neural probe. We begin extraction in 1 hour." As the Zephyrians filed out of the cell, Marcus noted several crucial details. The guards carried their weapons on magnetic holsters that could be easily triggered by sudden movement. The commander's elaborate armor had joints that would be vulnerable to precise strikes. Most importantly, none of them seemed to consider him a physical threat. They saw only a small, frightened human who posed no danger to superior alien warriors. Marcus Chen smiled slightly as the cell door sealed shut behind his captors. They wanted to extract information from a Navy SEAL? They were welcome to try, but they were about to learn that some humans were far more dangerous than their databases suggested. In the depths of the alien warship, surrounded by enemies who considered his species inferior, Marcus began to plan. His mission parameters had changed, but his objective remained clear: cause maximum damage to enemy assets and capabilities before termination. The Zephyrians thought they had captured a helpless human pilot. Instead, they had brought aboard one of Earth's most lethal weapons, and he was about to show them exactly what humanity was capable of when pushed to the edge. The neural probe chamber was a sterile nightmare of gleaming metal and pulsing lights. Marcus was strapped to an examination table that adjusted automatically to accommodate his human physiology, while dozens of hair-thin cables descended from the ceiling like mechanical spider legs. Each probe was designed to interface directly with neural tissue, bypassing normal sensory pathways to access memory engrams directly. Chief Medical Officer Thaisa Ara calibrated the equipment with practiced efficiency. She had performed this procedure on hundreds of prisoners from dozens of species, and humans were among the easiest subjects to break. Their neural patterns were remarkably simple compared to the multidimensional consciousness of more advanced races. "The human brain operates on primitive electrical impulses," she explained to the junior technicians observing the procedure. "Unlike the quantum-entangled thought matrices of our own species, human consciousness follows linear pathways that can be easily mapped and manipulated." Marcus listened to her lecture while maintaining his facade of terrified helplessness. In reality, he was using meditation techniques learned during SEAL training to compartmentalize his mind, creating mental barriers that would protect his most critical memories. The aliens might extract some information, but they would find his knowledge of current fleet positions and base locations frustratingly outdated. Commander Vex Thor entered the chamber, his satisfaction evident in the way his mandibles clicked rhythmically. "Begin with surface memories," he ordered. "I want to know about this human's recent missions and assignments." The first probe touched Marcus's temple with cold precision. Pain exploded through his skull as alien technology forced its way into his neural pathways, seeking pathways to his memories. He screamed, partly from genuine agony, but also to sell his performance as a helpless victim. Images flashed on the monitoring screens as the probe accessed his surface thoughts. The Zephyrians saw what they expected to see: routine patrol flights, boring reconnaissance missions, and the fear-filled moments leading up to his capture. Marcus had carefully rehearsed these false memories during his years of service, creating a mental cover story that would satisfy casual interrogation. "Interesting," Thaisara murmured as she studied the readouts. "This human appears to be exactly what he claims, a low-level pilot with minimal security clearance. His recent assignments were all routine patrols in outer system territories." "Dig deeper," Vexthor commanded. "All humans lie. Find me something useful." The probe pushed further into Marcus's mind, seeking older memories and deeper knowledge. The pain intensified, feeling like molten metal being poured through his brain, but his seer training held firm. He had endured worse during advanced interrogation exercises, when instructors had used everything short of permanent injury to break his resistance. What the Zephyrians found next seemed to confirm their assumptions about human weakness. They saw memories of a frightened young man struggling through basic training, barely meeting the minimum standards for military service. They watched him fail repeatedly at advanced courses, always falling short of selection for elite units. The neural probe showed them a mediocre soldier who had been relegated to routine assignments because he lacked the skills for anything more demanding. "Pathetic," Vexthor sneered as he watched Marcus's fabricated history play out on the screens. This creature couldn't qualify for real military service among his own species. No wonder humans fall so easily to superior races. Marcus bit back a smile despite the agony coursing through his skull. The false memories were working perfectly, created through years of psychological conditioning to withstand exactly this type of intrusion. The Zephyrians were seeing what he wanted them to see: a failure, a washout, someone who knew nothing of value about human military capabilities. But as the probe continued its work, pushing ever deeper into his mind, Marcus began to worry. His mental barriers were strong, but they weren't infinite. If the aliens kept digging, they would eventually breach his deeper conditioning and find memories that would reveal his true nature. "Sir," one of the technicians called out, studying a secondary display, "I'm detecting unusual neural architecture in the subject's deeper brain patterns. There appear to be compartmentalized sections that are actively resisting probe intrusion." Thaisara moved to examine the readings, her compound eyes reflecting the screen's glow. "Curious. Most human minds are completely open to neural probe technology. This level of resistance suggests some form of advanced conditioning." "Military conditioning?" Vexthor asked, suddenly interested. "Possibly, or psychological trauma that has created natural barriers. I recommend increasing probe intensity to breach these compartments." Marcus felt the probes dig deeper, their invasive touch becoming more aggressive as the Zephyrians tried to break through his mental defenses. Pain beyond description flooded his consciousness, threatening to overwhelm even his elite training. He could feel his barriers beginning to weaken under the assault. In that moment of crisis, Marcus made a crucial decision. If he was going to break, it would be on his own terms. He began to allow certain memories to surface, not his real experiences as a Navy SEAL, but another carefully crafted false narrative. This one painted him as a failed Special Forces candidate who had washed out due to psychological instability. The memories showed him cracking under pressure during advanced training, developing anxiety disorders and panic attacks that made him unsuitable for elite service. "There," Thaisara said with satisfaction as the new memories appeared on her screens. "This human did attempt advanced military training but suffered a complete psychological breakdown. His mind has been damaged by the experience, creating defensive barriers to protect his fragile psyche." The Zephyrians watched Marcus's fabricated memories of failure and weakness, seeing a broken man who had been relegated to routine assignments because his superiors couldn't trust him with anything important. The neural probe showed them panic attacks, anxiety disorders, and a soldier so mentally unstable that he was barely functional in combat situations. "Disgusting," Vexthor commented. "Even among their own pathetically weak species. This one is considered defective. No wonder he knows nothing useful." Marcus allowed tears to stream down his face, selling the image of a broken, traumatized soldier whose mind had been shattered by experiences beyond his ability to handle. The Zephyrians interpreted his emotional display as confirmation of their analysis. Here was a human so psychologically damaged that he posed no threat to anyone. "Terminate the procedure," Vexthor ordered with obvious disgust. "This creature is worthless. We've extracted everything of value from its damaged mind." As the probes withdrew from his skull, Marcus slumped in his restraints, playing the part of a man whose spirit had been completely broken by the ordeal. In reality, he was calculating distances, memorizing the layout of the medical bay, and noting the positions of potential weapons and tools. "Return it to its cell," the commander continued. "Perhaps we can use it as a subject for weapons testing or genetic experiments. At least then it might serve some useful purpose." The guards who escorted Marcus back to his cell treated him with casual contempt, seeing only a broken human who had been psychologically destroyed by a routine interrogation. They didn't bother with additional restraints or security measures, considering him completely harmless. Once alone in his cell, Marcus allowed himself a few minutes to recover from the very real effects of the neural probe. The alien technology had caused genuine damage to his peripheral neural pathways, leaving him with a splitting headache and temporary disorientation. But his core conditioning remained intact. His most dangerous memories still safely buried behind mental barriers that even he couldn't fully access without the proper triggers. As the hours passed and the immediate effects of the probe wore off, Marcus began to observe his surroundings with new purpose. The Zephyrians had made a fatal error. They had concluded he was harmless and adjusted their security protocols accordingly. Guards walked past his cell with weapons holstered and attention focused elsewhere. The automated systems monitored him for escape attempts, but didn't scan for more subtle forms of preparation. Through careful observation and patient waiting, Marcus began to map the ship's routine. Guard changes occurred every 6 hours, with a brief gap during shift transitions when corridor surveillance was reduced. The detention block's life support systems operated on predictable cycles, creating opportunities for someone who understood the timing. Most importantly, he identified potential allies among the other prisoners. Through subtle communications, finger taps against walls, strategic positioning near cell barriers, and coded signals during mealtimes, he made contact with other captured beings who had their own reasons to hate the Zephyrian Empire. There was Kethva, a Altarian crystal singer whose homeworld had been strip-mined for rare minerals. The surviving members of her species had been enslaved to work in Zephyrian processing facilities. Their natural ability to resonate with crystalline structures turned into a tool for their oppressors. In the next block was Grexmol, a swarm collective warrior whose hive ship had been destroyed while defending a neutral trading station. He represented the last fragment of a collective consciousness that had once numbered in the millions, now reduced to a single rage-filled survivor burning for vengeance. Each prisoner had been broken by standard Zephyrian interrogation techniques, their spirits crushed and their will to resist destroyed. Or so their captors believed. Marcus recognized kindred spirits, warriors who had learned to hide their true nature behind facades of defeat and submission. During the long hours of apparent recovery from his interrogation, Marcus began to work. Using techniques learned in advanced escape and evasion courses, he started to modify his cell's basic furnishings into tools and weapons. The water dispenser's activation mechanism could be converted into an electrical trigger. Fibers from his prison clothing could be woven into nearly invisible trip lines. Even his own body became a weapon as he carefully conditioned his muscles through isometric exercises, disguised as the restless movements of a traumatized mind. The Zephyrians had made their greatest mistake by underestimating him. They saw a broken human, psychologically shattered and physically weak. They had no concept of what a Navy SEAL was truly capable of when given time, motivation, and targets within reach. Marcus Chen began to plan his war against the Dominator's pride. It would not be a war of conquest or liberation. He had no illusions about his chances of survival. Instead, it would be a war of maximum destruction, designed to cripple Zephyrian capabilities and send a message that would echo throughout their empire. The aliens wanted to learn about human military capabilities through torture and interrogation. They were about to receive a much more direct education in what humanity's finest warriors could accomplish when backed into a corner with nothing left to lose. In the depths of the enemy warship, surrounded by superior technology and overwhelming force, Marcus prepared to show the Zephyrian Empire exactly why humans had earned their place among the stars through courage, determination, and an absolute refusal to surrender even when facing impossible odds. The escape began during the night cycle, when the ship's lighting dimmed to simulate planetary darkness, and most of the crew settled into their rest periods. Marcus had spent weeks observing the guards' patterns, noting how their attention wandered during the quiet hours when nothing seemed to threaten their secure vessel. Guard Corporal Zixtha was halfway through his patrol route when Marcus made his move. The Zephyrian had grown comfortable with his assignment, seeing the detention block as the safest posting on the ship. The prisoners were broken, beaten creatures who posed no threat to a superior warrior race. Marcus had spent the previous 3 days carefully loosening the water dispenser's mounting brackets through tiny movements during his apparent periods of psychological distress. When Zixtha paused to check his readings, the device came free in Marcus's hands with a subtle click that was masked by the ambient noise of the ship's life support systems. The improvised weapon caught the guard completely by surprise. One moment he was conducting a routine check of prisoner containment fields, and the next moment a supposedly helpless human had somehow materialized outside his cell with 30 pounds of metal and electronics swinging toward his head. The blow would have killed a human instantly, but Zephyrian physiology was more robust. Zixtha staggered, but remained conscious long enough to reach for his weapon. Marcus was ready for this, having studied alien anatomy through careful observation of his captors. A precisely delivered strike to the nerve cluster beneath the guard's secondary arms sent him crashing to the deck in convulsing paralysis. "Sleep well," Marcus whispered, as he stripped the guard of weapons and access codes. The Zephyrian's plasma rifle was too large for human hands, but the shock baton would serve his purposes perfectly. Moving with the fluid silence of a predator, Marcus began to work his way through the detention block. His first priority was releasing the other prisoners, not from any misguided sense of altruism, but because he needed diversions and chaos to accomplish his primary mission. HFY was first. The Altarian crystal singer had been held in a specialized cell designed to dampen her natural resonance abilities, but Marcus had spent weeks studying the containment system's power distribution patterns. A precise application of the shock baton to the primary conductor node overloaded the dampening field, freeing the alien musician from her sonic prison. "Human?" she asked in surprise as her cell barrier dissolved. Her voice carried harmonics that human ears couldn't fully process, creating an oddly musical quality even in her confusion. "Marcus Chen, United Earth Navy," he replied tersely while working on the next cell. "I'm guessing you want these bastards to pay for what they did to your people." Understanding flowed through the alien's crystalline features. My songs shall bring harmony to their death screams, she promised with disturbing enthusiasm. Grexamol required a different approach. The Swarm Collective Warrior was held in a reinforced cell, designed to contain creatures of massive physical strength. Marcus couldn't break the containment field through technical sabotage, but he had observed something the guards had missed. The warrior's apparent catatonic state was actually a form of meditation, a way of conserving energy while planning vengeance. "Warrior of the Swarm," Marcus called softly through the barrier, "I offer you the chance to spill Zephyrian blood." The response was immediate. Grexamol's eyes snapped open, revealing burning intelligence where the guards expected only broken defeat. "The last fragment of Hivemind Terathox accepts your alliance, small human. Free me, and we shall paint these corridors with the blood of our enemies." The warrior's containment required a more direct approach. Marcus used the guards' access codes to temporarily lower the field strength. Then both he and HFY worked together to overload the power couplings. The Altarian's resonance abilities could identify weak points in the crystalline matrix, while Marcus's technical knowledge guided their sabotage efforts. When the barrier finally failed, 400 pounds of enraged Swarm Collective Warrior exploded into the corridor like a force of nature seeking targets. "Where are the weapons?" Grexamol demanded, his multiple arms flexing with anticipation. "Armory is 3 decks up, Section 7, Marcus replied, consulting the ship schematics he had memorized from guard displays. "But we need to split up. I have a different target." The alien warrior looked puzzled. In Swarm Collective thinking, all fragments of a fighting force should concentrate their efforts for maximum effectiveness. Marcus explained quickly. "The ship's main computer core is in the central processing section. If I can reach it and plant a data virus, I can cripple their entire fleet network." "My people developed some nasty surprises for Zephyrian systems." This was only partially true. Marcus did carry several military-grade computer viruses in his enhanced memory implants, but his real target was more direct and infinitely more destructive. The Dominator's Pride was a command vessel, equipped with quantum communication arrays that linked it to dozens of other ships in the Zephyrian battle fleet. If he could reach the primary communications hub, he could do far more damage than simply destroying one ship. "Understood," Grexamol rumbled approvingly. "We create chaos while you strike at their nerve center. The hive mind approach adapted for individual action." "Exactly. Give me 30 minutes, then raise as much hell as you can. The longer you keep their attention focused on you, the better my chances of reaching the target." HFY added her own contribution to the plan. "My song resonance can destabilize their crystal-based targeting systems. Their weapons will fire wild, potentially damaging their own ship." As his unlikely allies prepared for their diversionary assault, Marcus slipped away into the ship's maintenance tunnels. His knowledge of Zephyrian ship design came from intelligence briefings that were supposedly outdated, but he was gambling that their conservative military culture meant most vessels would follow standard construction patterns. The gamble paid off. The maintenance tunnels followed exactly the same layout described in Earth Command's tactical manuals, allowing him to navigate through the ship's infrastructure while avoiding main corridors and security checkpoints. Moving through the narrow passages required skills that few humans possessed. Marcus had trained extensively in confined space operations, learning to move silently through spaces barely larger than his own body while carrying equipment and weapons. The Zephyrians had designed these tunnels for their own maintenance workers, who were significantly smaller than the warrior caste, which meant a human could just barely fit through the passages. As he worked his way toward the ship's central sections, Marcus could hear the first sounds of chaos erupting in other parts of the vessel. Grexamol's assault on the armory had apparently succeeded because plasma fire was now echoing through the corridors, punctuated by the distinctive harmonic screams that HFY used to disrupt enemy electronics. Alarm klaxons began wailing throughout the ship as the Zephyrians realized they faced a full prisoner uprising. Through the maintenance tunnel walls, Marcus could hear boots pounding on deck plates as security teams rushed to contain what they assumed was a desperate but ultimately futile escape attempt. They had no idea that the real threat was crawling through their ship's bowels toward the one system that could turn their technological superiority into a fatal weakness. The primary communications array was housed in the most heavily shielded section of the ship, buried deep within overlapping defensive fields and armor plating. Under normal circumstances, it would be impossible for a saboteur to reach it without fighting through multiple security checkpoints and defensive positions. But Marcus wasn't approaching through normal routes. The maintenance tunnels led to a secondary access point that was designed for routine technical service, heavily secured against external attack, but vulnerable to someone who was already inside the ship's infrastructure. The access panel was protected by both electronic locks and quantum encryption, security measures that should have been impossible for a primitive human to bypass. What the Zephyrians didn't know was that Marcus carried more than just computer viruses in his memory implants. During his years of service with the Navy SEALs, he had been selected for an experimental program that enhanced human operatives with cutting-edge technology. Quantum processors no larger than a grain of sand had been implanted in his brain, giving him computational abilities that matched or exceeded most alien artificial intelligence systems. The security locks fell before his enhanced capabilities like paper barriers before a hurricane. Within minutes, he had full access to the ship's primary communication systems, not just the external arrays, but the quantum entanglement networks that linked the Dominator's Pride to every other vessel in the Zephyrian battle fleet. Marcus smiled grimly as he began his work. The computer viruses in his memory were devastating, but they were nothing compared to what he was actually planning to unleash. Hidden within his enhanced memory was something far more dangerous, a weaponized artificial intelligence that had been developed by Earth's most brilliant programmers specifically for use against alien computer networks. The AI was designed to learn and adapt to any system it encountered, spreading through network connections while simultaneously corrupting every database, targeting system, and navigational computer it touched. But that wasn't the worst part. The AI was also designed to learn from the systems it infected, growing more sophisticated and more destructive with each new network it penetrated. By the time the Zephyrians realized what had been unleashed in their systems, the artificial intelligence would have evolved beyond their ability to contain or destroy it. "Let's see how your superior technology handles this," Marcus muttered as he initiated the upload sequence. The AI flowed into the ship's network like digital poison, immediately beginning its work of systematic destruction. Within seconds, it had identified and begun corrupting critical systems throughout the vessel. Navigation computers started reporting false positions. Weapons targeting arrays began selecting random targets. Life support systems started cycling between emergency and normal modes, creating confusion and panic among the crew. But the real devastation was only beginning. Through the quantum communication links, the AI spread to other ships in the Zephyrian fleet like a plague, jumping between hosts. Each new system it infected provided more processing power and more knowledge of alien technology, allowing it to grow stronger and more destructive. Throughout the Dominator's Pride, chaos was spreading on multiple levels. Grexmoll's physical assault had turned into a full-scale battle as he fought his way toward the bridge, leaving a trail of broken Zephyrian warriors in his wake. Kethva's sonic attacks had disabled most of the ship's targeting systems, causing weapons to fire randomly and potentially damage friendly vessels. And deep in the ship's core systems, Marcus's AI weapon was methodically destroying the technological superiority that the Zephyrian Empire had used to dominate dozens of species. Commander Vexthor reached the communications center just as Marcus finished his upload sequence. The Zephyrian leader's forearms held an assortment of weapons, and his compound eyes blazed with fury as he realized what the supposedly broken human prisoner had accomplished. "You!" he snarled, training his weapons on the small figure hunched over the control console. "What have you done to our systems?" Marcus turned slowly to face his captor, no longer bothering to maintain his facade of weakness and fear. When he spoke, his voice carried the calm confidence of a professional warrior who had completed his mission regardless of personal cost. "I've given your empire a gift," he said simply, "a lesson in exactly what humanity is capable of when you threaten our people and our worlds." "You're nothing but a broken pilot," Vexthor raged, "a failed soldier who couldn't even qualify for real military service." Marcus smiled with genuine humor for the first time since his capture. "You really should have done better research on human military classifications. I'm Commander Marcus Chen, United Earth Navy SEALs. Special warfare operator with 12 years of experience in operations you couldn't imagine in your worst nightmares." Understanding and horror dawned in the alien's compound eyes as he realized the magnitude of their error. "Navy SEALs," he whispered, "the human elite warriors, but our intelligence said they were myths, propaganda designed to frighten enemy species." "Not myths," Marcus replied calmly, "just very good at our jobs. And my job today was to show your empire that humanity doesn't break as easily as you think." The artificial intelligence had now spread through half the Zephyrian fleet, crippling vessels across multiple star systems and turning their own technology against them. Ships were losing navigation control, weapons were targeting friendly vessels, and communication networks were collapsing as the AI consumed and corrupted everything it touched. Vexthor raised his weapons, but before he could fire, the ship's lights flickered and died as the AI reached the primary power distribution systems. In the darkness, Marcus moved with lethal efficiency, years of training allowing him to strike with precision even when he couldn't see his target. The Zephyrian commander's death scream echoed through the communications center as Marcus's improvised weapon found its mark. As emergency lighting flickered to life, the alien leader lay crumpled on the deck, his exoskeleton cracked, and his life fluids spreading across the metal floor. Throughout the ship, similar scenes were playing out as the combined effects of the prisoner uprising and systematic electronic warfare tore the Dominator's pride apart from within. Grexmol had reached the bridge and was methodically hunting down the surviving crew members. Kethva's sonic attacks had triggered cascading failures in the ship's structural integrity systems. Marcus stood alone in the communications center, watching status displays show the spread of his AI weapon through the Zephyrian fleet. Ship after ship was going dark as critical systems failed and crews lost control of their vessels. Within hours, the entire battle fleet would be either destroyed or completely helpless. He had succeeded beyond his wildest expectations. A single human operative, dismissed as worthless by his captors, had crippled an entire alien fleet and struck a blow that would resonate throughout the Zephyrian Empire. As the Dominator's pride began to break apart around him, systems failing and hull integrity collapsing, Marcus felt a profound sense of satisfaction. He would not survive to see the final results of his mission, but he knew that the message would reach Earth Command eventually. Humanity would endure, and any alien species that underestimated human determination and ingenuity would learn the same lesson the Zephyrians had learned today, that sometimes the most dangerous enemies come in the smallest packages, and that a human warrior with nothing left to lose was the most terrifying force in the galaxy. The ship's final explosion lit up the asteroid field like a new star, carrying with it the end of Zephyrian dominance in this sector and the beginning of humanity's reputation as a species that could never, ever be safely underestimated.